Helen McConnell is a guide, a teacher, and a mentor, a true triple threat. Helen recently published her first book, 10 Simple Things You Can Do Now to Profoundly Change the World. Inessa Anderson and Helen talked about a healing modality called tapping, something she describes as energy psychology, and it's an essential tool for living.
Let's talk about tapping as a thing, because you're taking it out into prisons and, you're helping people resonate with it, with tapping. But I think that we should talk about what tapping is, because you found it for you.
Well, I still say to this day, I remember where I was and about when it was, but it found me. I mean, it came through the internet. I got an email about it, and I watched a video. So what
is tapping? Let's start with tapping.
Tapping is a modality, a healing modality that falls under the category, there actually is a category of energy psychology. I would say it's 21st century psychological, emotional healing, true healing, because it works with, tapping works with your conscious mind, which is what psychology works with. Tapping also immediately works with your subconscious mind, which psychology sort of does, but it's so much easier to access your subconscious mind when you're tapping. Tapping is sort of an offshoot of acupuncture. The points that we tap on the body with our fingers are acupuncture meridian points, but you don't need any needles. We just need to stimulate those points. So what we have discovered scientifically, which we always knew anecdotally, is that we being the tapping world, is that tapping calms the amygdala, which is the
amygdala.
That's part of the brain, right in the center of your brain, where it's like the first part of the human brain. Is the earliest brain development. Our earliest ancestors had an amygdala, but it's a little walnut-shaped thing in the middle of our brain, and it's where fight or flight resides. And we needed that to survive, that fight or flight response, in case we needed to run away from a predator, something dangerous.
Right.
That's how we've survived as humans. So what apparently happened as we began to get different parts of our brain where we could think and worry and stuff is we would be in fight or flight mode way more often than we need to be. That's why modern people are so sick, I believe, so diseased. Most of our disease is stress related. Now, I'm not putting doctors down, and I know there'll be people saying, no, that can't be true, but I believe that's true, that 95% of all disease is stress-related. So stress comes in lots of different forms, and tapping is great for our belief system. If we have a belief system that isn't serving us, and I'm not saying your belief in God, but more like your belief in, I get the flu every year. If you believe that, it's most likely going to come true.
Yeah.
Because that's how powerful our mind is. And not just the flu, but other things. We believe a lot of things that aren't good for us. And when we believe things, and I mean believe at our subconscious level, but you hear people talking about it, I always get the flu, people might say. Right. Well, me personally, I never get the flu. I don't get sick very often. It's pretty rare that I get sick because many years ago I realized that I was that powerful. Stress uses up all your natural resources for your immune system, and for fighting disease, and for keeping your body flexible and healthy. So if you can release that stress, which tapping is the best thing I know to release stress, you're going to have a much smoother ride. There are 9 sort of basic tapping points, which I can describe real quickly.
Sure.
So if people are listening and they don't know what they are, you can tap along. You can learn this yourself. I teach it to 2-year-olds. They know how to do it. Anybody can learn.
Yeah.
Anyway, they start on the top of the head, right in the center. If you're tapping right in the middle of your head. I think because it's so accessible, people think it's woo-woo and fake, but it's not. It's very real.
And then there's this one that's
inner
right
eyebrow.
Between the...
Well, it's actually on the inner eyebrow. It's where your brow ends. So it's one side or the other, essentially. But you can tap on the middle. It's okay. Mm-hmm. That's how forgiving tapping is. Then you go to the side of the eye, right where your eye, what would you call that? Right at the corner of your eye, outer corner of your eye.
Yeah.
But just don't poke yourself, and this is all very gentle. Then you go under your eye, right in the middle, under your eye. Under your nose, right between your nose and your upper lip.
And then below your lip.
Below your lower lip, we call it the chin point, but it's not really on your chin, it's just above your chin. Then we go to your collarbones, and it's a little bit below your actual collarbones, but anywhere close there is good. And then under your arm, We are made up of energy, and I think most everybody kind of understands that now, even though we're physical beings. At the deepest level of who we are, or the deepest level of anything physical, is energy. And in our human body, the ancient Chinese knew that we had meridians. That's where this all comes from. It turns out, scientifically, we now prove that the ancient Chinese medicine was correct. The meridians are energy sort of patterns. Energy movement goes up and down the body.
Right.
And then we have chakras that go around the body. But with tapping, we use these meridians. We base it on the meridians. And so if we're stressed or upset, or especially if we have trauma, that energy that's supposed to be going up and down the body kind of gets stuck and stalled and stopped. And that's where disease and pain and lots of other things start to happen in the body. The body is meant to be vibrant and healthy. It knows how, if we could sort of leave it alone, or, what I say to people is, if you could allow emotions of any kind to move through you rapidly, we would just have so many fewer problems. But we don't. We hang on to emotions. We remember things from our childhood. And the cool thing about tapping is it works with the body. We store all this stuff in our body and our subconscious mind. I'm not sure where one starts and the other one ends, but tapping helps us release all this stuff from our body. Whereas traditional talk therapy helps you sort of work things through in your mind, but it doesn't usually, sometimes it happens, but it doesn't take care of dissipating things out of the body.
How did you come to discovering this?
I always say that tapping and I found each other. It's sort of like we fell in love at first sight. Tapping came to me in an email. I remember where I was. I tapped along with this. It was a video link, and I tapped along with it, and I thought, I don't know what's going on, but I can feel something shifting. I wanted to be the person I knew that I could be.
That you could be.
What I'd like listeners to understand is that what we're talking about here is the basics of tapping. And tapping is a powerful, powerful tool. So this is like if you were building a house, you couldn't do it with just a hammer.
Right.
And tapping is both the hammer and the skill saw and the nail gun and the lumber. I mean, you can do everything with tapping, and that's why people don't believe that it works, because it does so much. But it works on the energetic level with emotions, with old thought patterns, and in the hands of a skilled practitioner, which I consider myself, we can do amazing things with tapping. I mean, I have helped people resolve deep trauma.
So if I were going to come to you and say, help,
Yeah.
what would be the first thing that you would do for me?
First, I would talk to you about what does help mean to you, and most people have some idea of what they want to change in their lives. And then I would say, are you willing to do the work? Because I can't do it for you. I am the guide. I'm the guide, and the teacher, and the mentor. But you still have to do the work. And I think a lot of times in our modern society, we want to go somewhere and get fixed.
Yeah, well, we want to wake up the next day and feel like, oh, I'm all good now.
I'm all good now. And I tell people, if that's the case, you need to go find somebody else. Because after one session of tapping with me, oftentimes people will feel better. And I say feeling better is great, but feeling great is better. And feeling great is much more deeper, and feeling better is good. But why stop there? That's what we've always done. Feeling better is comfortable, and feeling great requires digging deeper.
With tapping, you've moved into a special place. You've gone into prisons.
Yes, I have taken this to the men's prison in Salem, and
Tell me how you moved into that area.
When I first started tapping and getting trained in tapping and practicing, I realized that this was, like I said, a really powerful tool, and I have visions. I still offer to go lots of places. I mean, I've been lots of places with tapping.
Yeah.
I have a client who volunteers in the prison and has for many years, and so she asked me, would you be willing to bring this into the men's penitentiaries? As soon as she asked, I said, yes. They're going to put me in the safest possible situation in the prison. When I go there, I'm not in the cell block. I'm in a special room, a meeting room.
Yeah.
And the first time I went, it was truly life-changing, because there were 60 or 70 men inmates, in this room. They're all in chairs, and I'm in front of them all, thinking, oh my goodness, I'm a little uncomfortable here. I wasn't scared, but I was uncomfortable. And I got to tell you, those guys, They tapped along. They loved it. They can't wait for me to come back. And I'm putting together a program so that I can go on a regular basis to go help these guys find themselves. Do you know there are a lot of people in prison who made one mistake? And I've made lots of mistakes, and these guys don't know what to do with their emotions. They were never taught what to do with their emotions, or how to have emotions, or how to forgive themselves, or ask forgiveness, or forgive other people. They don't know, and so they are just like sponges. That was one of the best audiences, one of the best groups of people I've ever presented to. So willing, so open, and so excited about having something. So that if they do get out, they'll have some tools, and if they don't get out, they'll have some tools for living. That we don't do that for our prisoners in this country. Probably most countries, but we tend to just throw them into prison and not give them
tools for a living.
Yeah, they need tools for living. Otherwise, they're just going to end up back there. It is the ultimate tool because you take it with you wherever you go.
Right.
It's easy to use. I mean, I've tapped in airports, and I've tapped in the grocery store, and one of the best sort of side benefits that I've found for tapping is the spiritual growth that I've experienced. Not religious, spiritual, where I really know how to forgive and love and stuff because I cleared all my crap,
Yeah.
And that is a great gift, and really that's the inspiration for this book that I wrote. But a summary of the book is, if you want to change anything in the world, I need to change me first. Each chapter has a thing you can work on and tapping instructions so you can really start changing that thing. Focus on what you're for, not what you're against. If we're angry at something that, and we're throwing vitriol at what we don't like, we're just adding to it. We're adding to the hate. So that's why I wrote this book with very, I think, fairly simple instructions on how to take care of 10 of what I consider to be common problems. And it starts with self-judgment. And so the first chapter is to stop judging yourself. Well, I've worked with hundreds, maybe thousands of people over the years. And if I ask someone, what does the voice in your head say to you when you make a mistake? What people tell me that the voice in their head says to them is really appalling, scary, frightening.
Yeah.
I'm a horrible person. I'm a loser. I'm useless. I don't belong here. I don't deserve I don't deserve to be here. God hates me. My parents hate me. That kind of stuff comes out.
Right.
And so I want us to begin to treat ourselves as if we love ourselves.
Right. It comes from loving ourselves and then giving that love back to
everybody else.
Mm-hmm.
Because all the things that are going on in the world are just I believe, a manifestation of our collective being, our collective emotions. If someone, this will be really controversial, but when there's a mass shooting of some sort, my first thought, I always feel bad, of course, for the victims and the victims' families, but I feel really bad for the person who perpetrated that kind of crime, because in order to inflict that much pain, you have to be in a great, great, great amount of pain for a really long time. So this is one of the reasons I'm going into the prisons, because I believe that the way to end crime is to end that pain.
And so what are you doing with going into prisons?
First of all, I'm offering the inmates some new thoughts. They actually have groups of men who come into a meeting room, a big meeting room, 60 or 70 people. I'm not walking down what you see in the movies. There aren't guys yelling through the bars or anything at me. It's a different situation than that. It's as controlled as a prison situation can be. And the men who come to this group, I think they're selected. I think they're regular members of this group. And there's a guard, maybe more. I only noticed the guard that sits up here with me. I'm not the first one to take tapping into prisons, and I won't be the last. And tapping, we're taking globally, tapping, and this is happening all over the world. We're taking tapping into prisons. We're taking tapping into schools. We're taking tapping into, my goal is to get out into some homeless communities and not to just come in and say, hey, I've got a better way for you to live, but to offer a tool that they can use under any circumstances so that if they do want to make a change in their life, they can. I don't force this on anybody. I also do a monthly meetup group, and I teach classes every week in tapping. So group tapping is really powerful. It's
So
a way.
tapping again, to remind you, is that you're like...
Well, you can see all the actual tapping points. I like people to know the actual ones, and if you tap close to those, you're probably going to get the same result.
Right.
But I like people to know that I taught them the right ones. So, the correct. It was developed from very specific acupuncture points.
Right. So it's
you
an
can find those.
acupuncture. It's an acupuncture point.
No needles, though, just your fingertips.
Right, your
and
fingertips.
And you can do it to yourself.
Right.
It's called tapping because it's actually was called emotional freedom techniques, but EFT is a confusing,
Right.
set of initials these days. There's lots of things that are EFT. So we just say tapping. And it's becoming so mainstream. Even outside of Portland, when I talk about tapping, people get it. They go, "Oh yeah, I know about tapping."
Tapping, yeah,
Yeah,
right, tapping.
yeah. So I encourage people to try it. Try it on yourself first. Go online, find a video. You can go to my website, helenmcconnell.com, and find or go to my YouTube channel, find lots of tapping videos.
Right.
And at some point, your mind will not let you get past a certain point on working on yourself, I promise. Like I have a client I worked with this summer who had been tapping for 2 years, and finally he called me. He said, "I just can't get any further." And I said, that's because our subconscious mind won't let us get any further.
Really?
I work with a practitioner.
Really?
Yeah, that's the way we're built.
So where are you with tapping? You, Helen?
I'm not sure I know what you mean by that. Where am I?
Well, I guess I would say, do you feel like you're like...
I'm an expert.
Yeah.
I'm not afraid to say I'm an expert. I'm really good at what I do. I work with lots of different kinds of people on lots of different kinds of issues. I'm not afraid to... A lot of practitioners don't want to deal with trauma, especially intense trauma. I don't have a problem with that because I've done a lot of it, and I've cleared my own trauma. And so because I don't have that frequency in me anymore, I want you to imagine trauma living in your body like a buzzing.
Right.
Like a da-da-da-da-da-da-da. And if you come in contact with someone else's trauma, it intensifies your buzzing.
Yeah. How should we start?
To tap?
Yeah.
I just say go with the basics. Just learn the tapping points and start noticing what it does for you. There's a little bit of a script that goes with it. We do use words generally, but it's not required. Many people tap with no words, but we like to, for people like me, I like to stay focused on what I'm tapping about, so I use words, and it helps me work with clients to use words.
Okay.
So we say things like, we start with the negative. We always start with, like, if you notice a sensation in your body that you call anxiety, for example.
Okay.
I always suggest that you measure that intensity of that feeling right now when you think about the bill you have to pay or whatever, the thing that isn't really happening right now. And so say your intensity is at an 8 and you feel the intensity in your chest. You tap on the side of your hand, which is one of the points, and you say something like, even though I feel this anxiety at an 8, when I think about paying that bill, and then we usually add some sort of acceptance phrase, I accept myself completely. And we do that 3 times generally. Different practitioners do it different. And then you start tapping around those points that we talked about, the top of the head, and you just use a reminder phrase like this anxiety, and on the inner eyebrow, this anxious feeling in my chest, side of the eye, this anxious feeling under the eye, this anxious feeling under the nose. When I think about that bill, on the chin, this anxious feeling, collarbone, this anxious feeling, under the arm, this anxious feeling. You can be very repetitive. It doesn't really matter. You just do one round like that. Takes that 30 seconds. And then you check back in and notice, has it changed at all?
Wow.
And most people admit that it has changed. It's usually gone down, but sometimes it goes up, and that's okay too. We want it to change, though. We want things to start to change.
Right. So what do you, I guess, finally...
Yeah, it's hard. There's so much to talk about.
I know, but finally, I would say, what do you think the final thought is on tapping?
It's a game changer. It is a global game changer. Some of the most powerful spiritual people I know some of the most powerful and educated psychologists and psychiatrists, some of the most brilliant philosophers are using tapping. So it's a game changer. It really is. I was speaking on Capitol Hill a few years ago, and I said, boy, if you could get me in front of the houses of Congress, I would totally tap with them. And I know it would make a difference. I just think that that's how powerful it is. And it gives me the courage to stand up and speak. I used to be terrified to speak in public or to do this kind of thing, but tapping took all that away.
So I would say the final thing is, what do you think that you haven't done yet?
Oh my gosh, the list is so long of things where 2018 is the year. I mean, it's already started to be quite a full year. I've got lots of things already scheduled and planned. In addition to taking tapping to the prisons, I'm just open to any place that wants to learn about tapping, and I'll go and teach it. Including, I wrote a letter to the mayor of Los Angeles, whose name is Eric Garcetti. He's a really interesting guy. And I offer to come and teach his staff how to use tapping for prisons, schools, and homeless, which are 3 of his big issues in Los Angeles. Haven't heard back, but those types of things, I'm not afraid to do that stuff. Big, bold, system-wide changes. It would work in a corporation. It would work in a small business. It changes mindsets. If you're stuck in just like, I can't make enough money, tapping can help you. This is what I mean. Like, how do you explain in a very short time how tapping can help you make more money? But it does. It just helps you let go of all the ideas that you've picked up along the way that aren't true and aren't you.
So much food for thought from Helen McConnell, whose new book is out there right now, 10 Simple Things You Can Do Now to Profoundly Change the World. A little confession here. I'm a big, avid reader of books still, and I'm one of those people that likes to go to the end of the book to see how it ends, and go to the very end where she presents us with 4 exercises, and I wanted to read a little bit of the final exercise, which is you first identify your core values. There's a wonderful exercise that starts this list, like love and loyalty. And the last exercise is to take those newly identified values out for a spin. Helen suggests we write our 5 top values on a note card, look at the card each morning and throughout the day. Don't just look at the card, read the words, and really feel into them. Are these values how you want to live your life? Do they reflect who you really, truly are? As I said, so much food for thought. Again, thank you, Helen.